You're also the founder of Blockchain.io, and I think you're going to tell a little bit more about that soon.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in Amsterdam. I was here last time was for the 2014 Bitcoin conference, if some of you remember. So it's good to be here for another community event. Kudos to the organizers because this is beautifully organized and because we participate in lots of events around the world, and this one is particularly well done. As you said, I've been involved in cryptography for as long as I can remember. As a young engineer, I started working on pay television projects in the US and then in Europe. Pay television is a consumer-grade application of cryptography, but one that, frankly, I don't like particularly because for me, cryptography today is about citizen empowerment. Is about empowering people in a digital world with their own data, etc. And pay television is the exact opposite. It's capturing content to get rich people richer. So really we are in another dimension here with cryptos and Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin came about in 2008, I was on top of things. I was hanging out in forums and mailing lists and all that. So I really thought this was huge, and 10 years later, I'm even more bullish than I was at the beginning, because Bitcoin is still very much an experiment, but it's a successful experiment. So don't get fooled by the fact that it's still experimental in many ways, because the experiment is just being successful, and there are green lights everywhere. And that's true for Bitcoin, and to some extent for some other altcoins. Now, something happened in 2017 that is the ICO craze. That is the realization of the fact that now communities can issue their own money. In fact, in the form of tokens, Ethereum tokens today mostly, but potentially with any technology related based on Bitcoin and cryptography, now we have communities being able to regain sovereignty by issuing their own money. So that's what's so disruptive about Bitcoin. That's why central bankers don't want people to believe in this potential. They talk now about crypto assets. They never name Bitcoin, or they never name a particular coin because they are afraid to legitimize this new usage of the technology. But that's really what's happening now. We are transitioning from an economy based exclusively on debt money to an economy based on a mix of technologies for money. We'll still have debt money with central bank money, but we'll have plenty and potentially hundreds or thousands of monies issued by communities. So that's really a game changer. So sometimes people call this the Internet of Value. That's what's being built today, is the Internet of Value. It's a new network deployed over the internet. We've known the web for a long time. We've known email for a long time. Those networks developed on the internet. And Bitcoin and the Internet of Value more generally is being built on top of the internet just the same. The difference, instead of IP packets, we'll have transaction messages actually moving on this Internet of Value. So this vision we've had at Paymium, the company I started in 2011, Paymium, that's a Bitcoin exchange I started in 2011. We've had this vision for a long time, in fact, from the beginning, because we dubbed the company Money over IP back then, 2011. So we already knew this was going to happen, but the difference is today it's happening. Today it's happening with ICOs. It's happening with all these exchanges and wallets that are being developed and launched, because the Internet of Value can only exist if it's decentralized. So we need lots of exchanges, lots of wallets, and potentially lots of tokens and monies to make it happen. So blockchain.io is a crypto-to-crypto exchange that we are launching this year. based with the team that launched the Bitcoin exchange in 2011. So we're building on close to 6 years of experience running an exchange. That's a major difference. And Paymium was about trading Bitcoin for fiat currencies. And that's still a need because sometimes people want to cash out their tokens or coins for fiat currency because not all merchants accept cryptos yet. So Paymium will still be there for the long run, and we are building blockchain.io as a separate platform because it's only crypto to crypto, and it's very likely that different regulations will apply to blockchain.io. So Paymium is regulated by, say, the central bank for the fiat currency section of its activities. But blockchain.io is probably going to be regulated in a different way, just like other crypto-to-crypto exchanges. That's why there are two platforms, two domain names. So to clear that out, the blockchain.io domain names, we didn't buy it for a fortune. We bought it in 2012 for 10 euros at a time when the word blockchain wasn't very popular yet. It became popular actually in 2015 when bankers and the finance people started talking about cryptocurrencies. They didn't want to name Bitcoin, so they had to find another name. So they used blockchain because they thought this would dilute the power of Bitcoin and other coins, not to name the coin in their conferences, etc. So they used the term blockchain. Obviously, blockchain doesn't mean anything, to be honest. Only blockchain means something if you qualify it. So if you say Bitcoin blockchain, it means something because you are talking about the Bitcoin blockchain. If you talk Ethereum blockchain, it means something because you are talking about Ethereum. But those two blockchains have very different properties. So it's not the same thing. It's as if I was saying a database. It doesn't mean much if I don't say what the database is doing, or it's like one of those terms that are meaningless if they are not qualified. So blockchain.io is still we feel a good name for a crypto-to-crypto exchange because that's the domain where you'll be able to hop from one blockchain to another by trading one coin for another. That's basically the idea behind a trading exchange, crypto-to-crypto exchange. So the Internet of Value is made of different components, key infrastructure components. One is, whoops, oh, there is no back button, yes. Okay. The most obvious component is the blockchain. So we have several blockchains, that's those round shapes. We have wallets because the only way you can talk to a blockchain as a user is through a wallet. You have sidechains. That's a very interesting concept being developed by a few teams, notably Rootstock in Argentina. And that's still in the making, but I'm a great believer of this as a way of scaling blockchains. So I can deploy a different protocol on the sidechain. Essentially, what a sidechain is, it's a wallet based on the blockchain architecture. But it's an SPV wallet, so it's a light client, if you will, of the main blockchain that you run to deploy another protocol on another type of chain. But instead of having a floating blockchain with a coin that has a floating rate, you can peg the coin on the side coin on the coin on the main chain. So that's a very interesting feature because now I can have Bitcoins, for instance, traveling on a side chain on a slightly different protocol. So it's an interesting way of scaling. And last but not least, exchanges. Exchanges as a way to, again, jump from one blockchain to another. Exchanges are, in fact, more than a wallet. An exchange is, first of all, at blockchain.io, you'll have a bunch of wallets for all these cryptocurrencies. So it's certainly a wallet, but on top of the wallet, you have what we call an order book. So you have a way to put, sell, and buy orders, so you can trade these coins from one blockchain to another blockchain. So that's what exchanges are, and they are essential in the making of this Internet of Value. So there are ways to, lots of people talk about decentralized exchanges. And in fact, when we talk about decentralized exchanges, what we are aiming for is to mitigate the counterparty risk, because when you trade on an exchange, you have to deposit your coins to this exchange. So that's the counterparty risk, and there are lots of examples of exchanges that have been hacked. We haven't, because we do things slightly differently. We've been, like I said, we are experienced in running an exchange. We know what to do and what not to do, and sometimes some exchanges forget about the basic rules, and they get hacked. So that's why there are talks about decentralized exchanges. We feel the solution is not decentralized exchanges per se. The solution is what we call fair exchange protocols. That is a protocol that allows a swap between two coins on two different chains. That's what we call an atomic swap, and I will explain what that is in a few moments. And like I said, there are blockchains and wallets that are floating, that are not connected to other blockchains, and they have a problem, because if you are building an internet of value, you don't want to be left alone. So one of the problems we have that the ICO issuers may have is to get their token or coin listed on an exchange, because if they're not listed, they're not really part of the internet of value. They are kind of left out, and that can be a problem for their coins. So that was a two-dimensional view of the Internet of Value, but in fact it has three dimensions, and the third dimension is being built today with what we call the Lightning Network. That is an off-chain protocol where you send money from A to B without going through the blockchain. So basically what you do is you open a channel between these nodes on the Lightning Network. And when you open the channel, you do have an on-chain transaction, but after that's an escrow transaction. I will explain what that is in a moment. But once you have this escrow, you can trade off-chain for as much as you have deposited and for as long as you want. Well, there is a limit that we'll set to the escrow, but you can trade with the other parties off-chain. So that's also a great scaling solution, and that's what's being built today in 2018. So that's why I'm saying everything is still very much experimental, because we are still in R&D mode. There are still engineers testing new ideas about Lightning. For instance, this diagram doesn't shows a one path to Alice to Bob, but in fact there are ideas like multi-path payments where we have improved privacy by using different routes, because if we are using one route, that sets a problem of privacy on the network. So again, this is very much experimental. It's being built, but don't be fooled by the fact that it's still experimental. Once this is deployed, this is going to be huge, because that means potentially millions of transactions per second. So because we don't have the constraint of the block size and everything that we have currently without this off-chain protocol. So not that Lightning Network is being built, we have something huge in the making. Okay, so exchanges are a critical part of the Internet of Value, like I said. They are really the glue that will get together all these initiatives, all these coins and tokens. And there are many, coins and tokens come in different flavors. In fact, some are not even block-based, they are blockless. That's the case of the so-called dark coins like IOTA or Byteball. Fiat currencies are, for me, are stable coins. They are just stable coins running on a different protocol, but they are cryptographic tokens. The only difference is they have a monopoly today over what they call legal tender. But for me, they are just like any other coin. They are stable coins, but still, it's part of the equation of the Internet of Value. And there are also proof-of-stake coins that try to overcome a common objection to proof-of-work, which is the energy consumption. So proof-of-stake doesn't consume any energy, that's why it's not secure. It's not secure because there is no cost to making a signature. The validation of the transaction is done by the coin holders. Based on how much coins you have, you can sign transactions and get rewarded for participating in the network. So that's the principle of proof of coins. That's a promise of Ethereum. If you remember, Vitalik Buterin, when he launched Ethereum, promised that he would switch to proof of stake. So that was 2015. We are in 2018 and still not, not delivered. So it's one of the many promises that are not delivered. So if you hear promises in the crypto world, don't believe promises. Bitcoin doesn't make any promise. So that's the beauty of it. And it's delivering. Lots of coins do the reverse. They do lots of promising, and there is no delivering. So again, be critical to these projects that promise a lot. Again, Bitcoin never promised anything. Okay, so there is a connection between our new project, blockchain.io, and Paymium. For that reason, that not all merchants accept fiat. We need to have the possibility to cash out in fiat currencies, and that's going to be possible with this Bitcoin pivot, if you will, that you can transfer off-chain and instantly from one platform to the other. The reason there are two platforms, like I said, is regulation. It's also technical because we built Paymium in 2011, and evidently there are lots of things that have happened since then. So now we are building, we chose to build this new platform from scratch instead of forking, if you will, Paymium. But other than that, these two platforms are like two sisters, and they will complement each other. Okay, so the cryptocurrency exchange is the main feature of blockchain.io, but the thing that's on the roadmap that's really interesting is like decentralized settlements. So that's what I was alluding to, decentralized exchanges. Our way of thinking is decentralized settlement. In other words, we will decentralize the part that needs to be decentralized, namely the exchange between one coin holder to another, between one party to a transaction to the other, but the order book itself will remain centralized. We don't believe there is much value in trying to decentralize the order book, because when we decentralize the order book, we lose performance, and we lose to some extent, we lose also some transparency. So we prefer to stick to a centralized order book and decentralize the settlement of, and I will explain what that means right now. So decentralized settlement means there is no counterparty risk, because at no point the exchange has the custody of your coins. So if you are paranoid about the exchange being hacked, you can use this option. On blockchain.io, it's going to be an option to you can choose decentralized settlement for your trade. The trades happen off-chain, so that's why we don't have these problems of that we have with decentralized exchanges that use on-chain trades, where miners can game the system in their favor with something like front-running. In other words, they put their orders, they mine their order transactions before other people's transactions. So that's a problem with decentralized exchanges. So we'll use off-chain trades. Atomic swap, that's the basis of decentralized exchanges and decentralized settlement. That means if one side of the trade happens, the other side happens also. There is no way that one party can be tricked with this system. So if I trade Bitcoin, I sell Bitcoin. When the other party receives the Bitcoin, automatically I can cash in the coins I'm getting from the other party. So if, for instance, I want Zcash, that's the symbol here, Zcash. If I get Zcash, only when my Zcash transaction gets mined in the Zcash blockchain, automatically the other party can get his or her Bitcoin transaction in exchange. So that's what atomic swaps are about. And also, because we are using this centralized order book, we'll have more liquidity for this decentralized settlement. If you have a decentralized exchange, you start from scratch, you may have trouble getting lots of traders on your platform because the performance are degraded by the decentralization of your platform. That's a technical fact. The fact is we are bundling everything on a centralized order book helps liquidity. That's why we are preferring decentralized settlement over other solutions like that are proposed by other decentralized exchanges. So the way atomic swaps happen, just for those of you that are not familiar with this concept, it's very simple. It's relatively simple. It's based mostly on what we call time-locked transactions. So a time-locked transaction is basically an escrow transaction where you send money to an address that has a script here, and the script can be a Bitcoin script, or it can be a Solidity script if you're on Ethereum. But let's stick to a Bitcoin script for a moment. Basically, I'm sending funds to an address that is a 2 of 2 multisig between Alice and Bob. Here, say I'm Alice, and the purple is Bob. Well, those are not gender-specific colors. So I'm escrowing my money on a 2 of 2 address with Bob's signature required and mine. But if Bob disappears, alternatively, there is this time lock. I can recover my money with my own signature after a certain period of time. So even if Bob walks out of the transaction or disappears, my money is not lost. I can recover it after a certain period of time. So that's the time period here is set for me to trade with Bob freely, typically in an exchange transaction. So that's what the time lock transaction is, and that provides the basis for what we call atomic swap. So for atomic swaps to happen, you have to have this capability on both chains. For instance, if you use Bitcoin and Litecoin, you have scripting capabilities on both chains, so you can have this atomic swap between Bitcoin and Litecoins. And potentially, with Ethereum, you have a scripting language also that's called Solidity, and yet you can also implement this type of things on Ethereum. So essentially, any money that's a cryptocurrency that is programmable can be swapped atomically with another. And almost by definition, all cryptocurrencies are programmable. I like to think when central bankers say cryptocurrencies are not money, my response is they are much more than money. They are programmable money. So a cryptocurrency is much more than money. It's a network, it's an ecosystem, it's a currency, and it's also almost an operating system. I can almost deploy applications on a certain cryptocurrency. And time-lock transaction and atomic swaps are one of those applications, one of many. Okay, so in a fair exchange protocol, what happens is the nice thing is I can have, for instance, Alice, that is a customer of blockchain.io, trading with Bob. That's not even a customer of blockchain.io. Bob is just on the network looking for an opportunity to trade, and he just doesn't want to deposit funds on blockchain.io for whatever reason. But Alice is a prior customer. She has deposited funds on her account on blockchain.io. So they are in a different situation, and yet they can trade together. So the way it works is Bob just escrows his Litecoins, in my example, for 2 days. That's the time lock. And he will request an escrow from the exchange to trade Bitcoins because he wants to buy Bitcoins with his Litecoins. Just as simple as that. So it starts with an escrow transaction here, and here it's just a regular deposit by Alice. Nothing's changed for Alice compared to a traditional exchange. So in the next step, when the trade actually happens, what happens is simply Bob requests a quote in Bitcoin to sell some of his Litecoins, not necessarily his entire escrow, but say 20 Litecoins, and he asks for a quote. So the exchange will respond with a quote saying, for instance, I can give you 0.2 Bitcoins for 20 Litecoins. So what's this price? Where does this price come from? it comes from the exchange order book. So that's where it's interesting to bundle everything on a single centralized order book with decentralized settlements and traditional centralized settlements together, because we have more liquidity and therefore they can provide a better quote. The exchange can provide a better quote if there is more liquidity. And by the way, we have a bit of experience with that because we've been practicing, we've offered services to merchants for many years at Paymium. When you buy something online in Bitcoin from a merchant, that's typically what the exchange does. It tells you you must pay X Bitcoin, and you have, say, 15 minutes to pay because the quote is good for only 15 minutes. Obviously, a quote won't last forever because, as you know, there is lots of volatility on cryptocurrencies, so we can only quote for a certain period of time. And we hedge against volatility for that period of time only. That's why the quote is reasonable and acceptable by Bob, in my example. So when Bob accepts the quote, the trade happens. And the trade is simply the delivery of Bob gets his 20 Litecoins. And the Alice balance is also updated. She's now the owner of 20 Litecoins. At this point, Bob can just cash out and walk out of the transaction by closing the channel. At this point, if he does so, he has no longer the possibility to trade his 80 Litecoins. He's getting his Bitcoins and just walking away with his, closing the channel with the hub, with the trading hub. But Alice can withdraw any times. That nothing has changed for Alice compared to a traditional exchange. So that's how an atomic swap on blockchain.io will happen. Again, that's what we call decentralized settlement. It's really the distinguishing feature that we are proposing, among a few others. But I thought this was an interesting one to share with you this morning because I'm not here to sell anything. I'm just here to share some experience and some of the things we do at Paymium and blockchain.io. Again, I'm an engineer. I'm not a salesperson, so I'm not selling anything. We are still in the ICO. So if you want to participate in a token sale, you can just visit blockchain.io and leave your email address. You'll be in the loop for the token sale. It's actually starting next week, so the timing is very good for this conference. And I'm here to answer any question. I'll stick around after the conference and until the end of the day. So please reach out, and thanks very much for your attention.
Thanks, Pierre. That was an interesting talk. We have still 5 minutes left, actually. So are there any questions here in the room? Not? Then I think you're here. Where? Can I give the microphone?
It's a very quick question. What were your major challenges when you were doing your setting up your blockchain? Major challenges.
Major challenges for exchanges in general, or for us in particular? In general, okay. The main challenge. There are many challenges. Many. So we just point at a few. One is the talent, because you need talents. And now there is lots of capital has come to the space, and not so many talents have grown so rapidly, I'd say, since 2017, so that there is a relative shortage of talents today compared to the amount of capital that's been injected in the space. So this is going to be resolved with people getting trained and basically teaching themselves about blockchain. As we said in the previous panel, it can be true for women. We've hired women at Paymium, by the way. So yes, that's the main thing is the hunt for talents. Then there is a problem with regulators. You never know what they're going to do to you. So that's a general problem for financial services. but that's particularly true for exchanges because they are an easy target for exchanges. So at Paymium, we've been able to maintain a bank account for 6 years, and I can tell you it's not an easy accomplishment. I know some people are going to Malta, some strange jurisdictions. We are in France, so in a major economy, like Dutch economy also would be good. If you have to go to Malta or Gibraltar or wherever weird jurisdictions like Cayman Islands, etc., that means you are not really accepted by the financial community, or you are not. So that can be a challenge also if you have to look for weird solutions like that. So that's the challenge number 2. But those two are big.
Thank you. Is another question here? Yeah.
Thank you, Pierre. It was a very nice presentation. I've traveled a lot, and I've seen many projects right now who are, planning to launch a decentralized trading platform. And it's a very ambitious project, I think. And my question is, what's your roadmap? When do you really plan to launch the platform?
Okay, that's very simple. It's this year in September. We'll be live in production in September. So it's already being tested for some of the features. So we are really well into delivering the product because, again, we are building on a 6-year experience. So for us, it's probably easier compared to people starting from scratch. I would not say it's easy, but we are well advanced. So again, we have alpha testing going on in June, and we go live in production in September for all the customers.
Thank you, Pierre. Will you be the whole afternoon here for any other questions?